Or could you say a little bit more, maybe like specifically about what that was like what it felt like to be beginning this thing, or to have such a strong connection to somebody, and then such a strong connection to this creative thing? I don't know, what was that like? Like, what did that mean for your life? Like, what did your life look like?
You know, it was the encouragement. I feel like I kept finding encouragement in my teachers. So being encouraged, you know, to continue writing pushed, you know, it made me feel like, oh, I have some skill. I have a talent here. So that's what like kept me, that's what motivated me, I think, to keep writing for an audience that wasn't me back then, or like that sort of like sort of introduced me to the idea of writing for an audience that wasn't me, which I've been like trying to not do now. Now I'm like going back to just writing for myself. It was very difficult. I also was just like crazy. I was a crazy person, so I don't know how, I'm still a crazy person, so I don't know how, like, I don't know if I could say like this is how it sort of transitioned in my life. You know, this is how poetry sort of like affected my life. I was nuts. I was like misbehaving and getting in trouble, and you know, sort of being wild, and then I would just write about it.
Do you think that's part of like your idea of being a poet, or part of how you are a poet, or how anyone is a poet, or like, do you feel badly
in some
about
regards,
it?
yes, and in some regards, no. I don't feel badly about it. I don't regret. I learned from those experiences in the end, and yeah, no, I don't feel badly about it. I don't feel badly about it. It's just my past, you know. But I don't link that to the life of a poet. You know, I don't think the poet has a life that's, you know, should be anything or looks like anything. I think everybody, you know, in graduate school, I felt like every instructor was like, poetry is everywhere, right? But at the same time, we would see like, you know, like the hypocrisy was, you know, we're in a workshop being critiqued, and, you know, there's this sort of like, I don't know, there's this whole narrative around poetry being everywhere. And then there's like the other narrative that like poetry is dead. So I think if that's true, and how can there be like a poet's life? You know, I think that anybody then is a poet. Everybody is a poet. It's just a matter of whether or not they feel empowered in their voice or not, you know? They don't even need to feel empowered in their voice. So long as they're producing some sort of text, it's, you know, I think that's where, and maybe not even producing text. You know, I don't know if I have like these are definitive things. You know, I think of like certain memes or videos now. Like I saw this like GIF video that I reposted on Facebook, and it was just like a comedic thing. Like this guy was like rhyming like all these different clips with like "surprise motherfucker."
I've seen that one.
You saw that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, and to me that's poetry. I think that's poetic. I think that person has produced poetic text, you know, and does that person necessarily identify as a poet? No, but who cares, you know? 1 million+ views, and people are laughing, and there are formal elements to it, then it's a poem. Yeah, I don't know if I would say that a poet has a, you know, sort of like life. I find that like a lot of poets who identify themselves as poets sort of construct, or they spend a lot of time together, especially I think in New York. I think that the community of poets in New York is very insular.
Do you identify yourself as a poet?
I do. I used to think it was like stupid. I used to think it was really stupid. But a friend of mine, Juliana, you know, I saw her like, she's a poet, Juliana Huxtable. I saw her get angry or frustrated with people, sort of the way that people refer to her, as if she had to fight for the title of poet, because to sort of like build her audience, she didn't go about it in this sort of like, you know, through the academy and then like she has an audience of poets. She went about it through these like really creative, in I think amazing ways that totally inspire me. And she used social media to build an audience. She like cultivated a community of cultural producers in the city through like events and, you know, just like fun things that brought people together. And she built her audience that way. But then, you know, when people talk about her writing, her production, her creative production, it seemed like she had to fight for that title. It was always like nightlife in like persona or muse or this or that. And the fact that that to me made me feel as though I shouldn't take my privilege for granted in a way, you know. She and I obviously, we come from different positions, you know, and I think that to say I'm not a poet or to sort of like renounce the title is like me sort of exercising my privilege, because people have to fight for it. So I should just, you know, be honest or something.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you think that seems like a very motivating force, right? To see other people struggle, or to hear that, or to see that like it's not easy. I mean, you know it's not easy, but to see how
yeah,
it can be.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that she is an interesting. I mean, just because she has made it in so many ways as a performance artist and as a poet now. But I think that, yeah, seeing her sort of at the beginning of putting her work out there and her words out there. I don't know if she ever, at first I don't know if she identified as a poet, but.
What do you think the end game is? I mean, if you identify as a poet now, like what's the ultimate goal for a poet, or what is the end for a poet? Is it, I mean, of course it can be a lot of different things, but for you, like what do you think? Do you think about the end, or do you think about the future, and sort of, what do you think about the future? What do you think the future has in store for yourself as a poet, for poets in general? Well, I have like a wish that like the whole in like publishing all that shit is dismantled. I have a dream of like, you know, poets just building their own communities using Tumblr or on social media, or, you know, I think that the idea of like eliminating all gatekeepers to me is just amazing. And I think it's definitely possible, and probably where we're headed as an art form, ultimately, sort of like big data poetry kind of future. I hope for it in a big way. I think that when I see communities of poets, I feel like the communities they're very stifled, just because, you know, especially here, people come to New York and like, this is gonna sound so shady. People, you know, and again, privilege because I'm from here and my whole life is here. So but when people come here, I think that like, they come here for grad school or whatever, they want to participate in the writing communities here. And so what all they find are writing communities, or all they seek are writing communities. And then it becomes masturbatory. The work that they produce all sort of sounds the same. And I'm guilty of this too. Like, I'm not saying that I sound different. I think it's just a trap. It's a trap. But I think that's really, and it disappoints me, because I think that New York has obviously so many people who are doing amazing things that you can seek out and learn from, working across different disciplines, across different media, but like also like in social work, or like in, you know, in the real world, working in a business, working in like a bank office. I mean, I don't think I have any friends who work in banks, but maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. I think that like there's wisdom in that too. So yeah, it frustrates me to see just like a bunch of poets, you know, they always just all hang out together. And to me, it's like, so that's the audience that you're producing for. But again, I'm lucky because like I've always been, I've lived elsewhere, but my whole life feels like it's here. So it's easy to just say like, oh, like I don't just hang out with poets, because like I have a much wider community here than I think most people do.